It's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and start the meeting.
Commissioner Lade, Commissioner Diaz,
Present.
Commissioner Bray, Commissioner Wagner, Commissioner Kreiner,
Here.
Commissioner Hardy,
Here.
Chair Vang.
Here. Let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I'll go ahead and read the procedures for the meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person and electronically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all virtual participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and would like to comment on the item, use the raise hand function on Zoom. To avoid any confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand. For each matter considered by the commission, there will first be a staff presentation, followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing length of public debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition to the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The 3 lights on the podium next to the microphone will indicate the amount of time remaining for the speaker. The green light will be turned on when the speaker begins. The yellow light will come on with a soft bell ring when the 1 minute is remaining. The speaker should be completing the testimony by the time the red light comes on with the final bell indicating time has expired. All in-person public testimony must be presented to the commission at the podium. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral or written testimony or before the close of the hearing. We'll start today's meeting with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Hello. Yes, good evening, Chair Vang, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Israel Trejo with the Planning and Development Department. There are no changes to the agenda. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Do any commissions have any changes to the agenda? I see none. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion. Let's go ahead and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next, do we have any reports by the commission? I see none. We'll go ahead and start with new matters. This is ID 23350. This is for the public hearing to consider the adoption of the Central Southeast Asian Specific Plan.
Thank you, Stephen. Can you go back a slide or two? Perfect. All right. Chair Vang, fellow commissioners or other commissioners, my name is Drew Wilson. Thank you for taking time out of your week to come to this special meeting. I hope my presentation warrants the specialty of the meeting, and that we have a good evening. Tonight, I'm presenting on the Central Southeast Specific Plan. Steve, next slide. So my name is Drew Wilson. I was the project manager for this specific plan. I'm currently in the Parks Department, but previously I was a supervising planner in the Long Range Planning Division for the Planning Development Department, and have led this project and is going to continue it to the end. Next slide. So I'm going to go over my presentation. So I'll give a background on the community engagement and how we got to where we are today. I'll give a brief overview of the plan and some of its content. I'll also review the environmental assessment, public comment, and then lastly, the findings and staff recommendations, which are key to your decision-making. Next slide. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to start with a brief background of the process and how we got the document that's in front of you. Quick reminder on what a specific plan is. It's a long-range plan that takes and contemplates a closer look at a specific area than the general plan, but it's still in line with the objectives of the general plan. It establishes a detailed strategy for a specific region, and there are requirements set forth for specific plans in the state of California with prescribed elements, and this plan meets all of those prescribed elements. So there's a focus on physical improvements, such as land use, transportation, park economic development, improvements, quality of life. And again, this document has a horizon of 20 to 30 years. Next slide. To give you some planning context about the area we're talking about, the specific plan area, Central Southeast area, is roughly 2,000 acres. It's a continuation of the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan. This is following suggestions in the general plan, and it builds upon both of those documents. This area is entirely within the city limits. That's due to its funding source. So this is CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds, which means all of the funds have to be spent within jurisdiction of the city. Additionally, it's going to replace the Butler Willow Specific Plan, which was adopted in 1971, and the Roosevelt Community Plan, which was adopted in 1992. The plan area here, we lovingly call this our Scotty Dog Plan. As you can see by the shape, its nose there is Peach to the east. We have Tulare to the north where the ear is. We have California down to the south where its toes would be. And then we have just to the east of that, the east side of the boundary is just within East Avenue. It should be noted that the plan boundary changed from the last time you saw it during initiation. And I'm going to go further into that when I get into components of the plan. Next slide. So the foundation of this plan, of how it was established, and the contents of it come from community engagement and interaction with our key stakeholders and our steering committee. So we started the process off by having a series of stakeholder meetings, 16 in totals, to get an understanding of what some of the issues and opportunities, wants and desires of the community were. We created an engagement toolkit that was utilized by our stakeholders as well as our steering committee, and we held several mobile workshops. So the city staff participated in 20 plus mobile workshops. Those were held at churches, schools, community organizations. We have kind of an old mantra from Fresno State: anytime, any place, anywhere. If somebody called and wanted to learn about the plan and provide input, we made ourselves available for attendance. Additionally, the engagement toolkit was used by several stakeholders, and we received several comments. A lot of those comments went in form of public workshops as well as surveys. So we had both 4 public workshops and 4 surveys. That really allowed us to get an understanding of the direction we were going and if it met the intent of the residents and the steering committee. Again, we had a steering committee that held 10 total meetings. We had 3 community conversations when the specific plan was released. This was done in conjunction with the West Area Neighborhood Specific Plan. This was also done in 2020 when there was still stay-at-home orders. So we wanted an opportunity to engage with the public, knowing that we couldn't go to them. So we had virtual community conversations where we gave detailed descriptions and discussions related to some of the plan components, allowed people to ask us questions, and we tried to do it podcast style. All of those were held on the city, or streamed on the city's Facebook page, as well as on the CMAC station. There was 2 mass mailings to every property owner and resident of the plan area announcing some key milestones throughout the plan. Additionally, there was a mailer sent out prior to this meeting in Planning Commission informing any property owner or resident that there was a potential land use change that was going to be considered by Planning Commission and Council. And again, our networking was through community organizations, religious institutions, the library, community centers. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. They really helped us spread the word, get community engagement. And again, everything that we did was hosted on the city's website and sent throughout emails. Next slide. So the guiding principles, this was the first action by our steering committee and became the foundation for the plan. These principles are shown throughout the specific plan document. It should be noted that any decision made by the steering committee throughout the process, so even voting on these, It was agreed that a supermajority would be used, so 75% minimum of the steering committee would have to vote to approve. These guiding principles started off at a community workshop where they were reviewed, evaluated by the community, and then taken in a form to the steering committee where they voted on them. They're in the document, and I won't read every single one of them, but you can see that there's definitely an emphasis on celebrating the diversity within the plan area, making sure that there is continuous engagement with residents and stakeholders, and supporting those that are underserved, making sure that there was housing affordability, minimizing displacement, making sure there was an opportunity for all to become mobile and have a complete neighborhood, and support economic vitality and public health, right? All this while investing in public safety and beautification of the area. Next slide. So as the planning process continued, one back please, thank you, Stephen. As the planning process shifted to more detail of what some of the strategies or changes would be, there was the development of these big ideas. So it became pretty clear that there were some key focus areas that the community had. They're showcased here in these 9 areas. All of these have prescriptive goals and strategies, and I'll go into the difference between the two in this specific plan. And this was something that really garnered a lot of attention from the residents when we took this on that road show to our mobile workshops. A lot of people agreed with them. Some of the core principles of what we had within those big ideas changed throughout those conversations, but this is the crux of the documents. They felt that if these big ideas could be achieved, the community vision that was desired would be achieved as well. Next slide. So in order to achieve those visions, we have to have goals and we have to have strategies. So the last action before we went to developing the plan is we created a set of goals and we prioritized them with the steering committee. Again, this was at a workshop where we had conversations with several residents. We also had a survey that went out and we asked people to vote and tally what their top priority goals were. And as you can see here, we've broken it into 3 tiers, and that's within the specific plan. So the goal is, and the directive of the plan is to focus on those tier 1 goals and really focus on to ensure that those happen first. There is language in there that notes that if there is a low barrier to achievement for another one of the goals, that it shouldn't, be pushed to the side, that it could be prioritized even if it's on tier 2 or tier 3. But the community wanted to make sure that there was clear set goals in that plan, and those are there. That's also in the last chapter. Next slide. Prior to having the actual plan, we had an initiation. So the initiation is the formal process where we came to Planning Commission and we went to City Council to initiate the planning process. This allowed staff to, 1, go to the drawing board and create a public review draft of the plan, and then 2, start the environmental assessment process. So we came to Planning Commission and Council got that approval and moved forward. Again, there was one slight change, and I'll go into that when we get into the plan overview. So now I'm going to talk about what are some of the key chapters within the plan, and then I will go into how it's separated, and then one key distinction between the last time I spoke to you and today. Next slide, please. So there's the specific plan has 8 total chapters. They're all listed here. I'm not going to go into detail of each one. I only have 2 slides related to them, but I wanted to take some time to talk about why they were broken out this way. So there's standard introduction, vision and goals, land use and urban design. Several of them are grouped based off of what we heard from the residents in terms of what their priorities were for the goals, but also some of those big idea components. So transportation and public realm are directly connected. If you're going to take public transportation, you will end up in an area that is likely a public realm, and the infrastructure is necessary to make sure that both of those can work and thrive. Additionally, parks and open space, that's something that the community definitely desired. There is a higher number of parks per 1,000 people in this area, in some of the surrounding areas, but still doesn't meet the general plan objective. So there was discussion there of making sure we invest in the appropriate parks. It is noted that in the red line draft, we did include Measure P as a potential funding source to meet some of those goals. And then economic development, that's definitely something that was talked about by several residents from the very beginning. If you look at the big ideas, you look along Kings Canyon, along Orange Avenue, you look at the previous IRS site, you look at the Asian Village, the idea there is making sure that there's job corps, training centers, stuff for economic prosperity for these residents, and that was something that ran throughout. So we gave its own chapter. Additionally, quality of life. I think this is something that weaves throughout the entirety of the plan, but we felt it was necessary to really make sure it had a chapter of its own in there to ensure that some of the needs and desires of the residents and the things that they felt were inhibiting from getting there were addressed. So we have a quality of life chapter. And then next steps in funding, which is that pathway, which includes the tiered goals as well as some funding mechanisms to get there. Next slide. So one thing I do want to speak about that's different from this plan and other plans is it has an implementation of goals and strategies, where previous plans in Fresno, they use goals and policies. So the strategies was intentional. We heard from the residents that they kind of wanted a community action plan. So they wanted more than just a series of words that they felt like they couldn't use. They wanted prescription actions of how they could get there, and so we came up with goals and strategies. So we have those tiered goals, and based off those tiered goals, we made sure we invested more time into dedicating prescriptive strategies for those top tier goals. Every one of them has prescriptive strategies that talks about the pathway to get there to achieve that overall goal. But we felt that we wanted to meet the intent and desire of the residents was a community action plan. So yes, it is a specific plan, but these strategies look a little bit different than maybe a specific plan. Most recently, you've seen the West Area Neighborhood specific plan. So a little bit different in some of its makeup, but still the intent there is to create a visionary document. So the goals are visionary statements, and the strategies describe the recommended actions. Next slide. So I do want to talk about a change that is throughout the entire document, and then also within Chapter 3. So this is the land use map that you saw prior when we came to you for initiation. And this includes a couple areas. I want to speak right there near east, where it's outlined in pink and black. If you go to the next slide. When the plan was formally initiated by City Council, there were parcels that were removed in the plan area, and they were incorporated into the South Central Specific Plan, so they are not included in this document. All right, so you have several actions. One of the actions is to ensure that we create an environmental assessment, so if you want to go to the next slide. Just want to point out that the environmental assessment was released on February 3rd and closed on March 6th. That was extended due to an error on staff's behalf of not having the date listed correctly on the website, so we extended that to April 21st. There were 4 submissions. The comments focused on the need to for future projects to identify some potential contamination on sites in the plan area, as well as water runoff capacity for new development, and then clarification on the public comment period timing. Next slide. Next slide. So this is, I'm going to shift now to the public draft of the actual specific plan. The last one was environmental assessment, and this is the specific plan. Next slide, please. So just a reminder that the plan area did change during the initiation. Staff went back and we released a plan on April 8th. We had a comment period of 90 days. During that time, we did have those 3 community conversations. We had a couple pop-up events, as well as had several steering committee members post or host activities related to the plan. So it closed on July 8th. There were 4 comment letters in total, 54 discrete comments related to the plan. Of those comments, we incorporated 10 changes to the goals and strategies, and that's included in the red line draft, which was an appendix or an exhibit in the staff report. And then findings and staff recommendations. So we're on the home front here. Next slide. There's 3 findings that we have today that are required, 2 specifically for you. We have the Fresno Municipal Code findings, a housing element, and then additionally we have SB 330 that we wanted to point to. So staff did an evaluation of the municipal code, and we do feel it's consistent with the general plan goals and policies, and it also is consistent with the development code. It should be noted that the plan does not suggest any modification to the development code. The development code will be used for the implementation of the specific plan. Next slide. So there is land use and zoning changes are proposed on 1 housing element site. As you can see there, there's a net loss of 89 units in capacity for the 0 to 12, but there's a net gain of 214 for 12 to 16. and a net loss of 22, but there is surplus capacity. If you want to go to the next slide. Through staff's evaluation, we found that the reduction is consistent with the adoption of the general plan and that the remaining sites identified in the housing element are adequate to accommodate the share of RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment. Next slide. Housing Crisis Act of 2019, more commonly known as SB 330. The adoption of the plan was actually a result in a net gain of housing capacity. So yes, we do see some loss of some units, but we have surplus capacity for the housing element. There is overall a net gain of 2,300 units from the specific plan, so increased number of potential capacity. Lastly, staff's recommendations. Staff recommends that you approve of the findings set forth in the environmental assessment, as well as approval, next slide, of, and they're all batched into one, the repeal of the Roosevelt Community Plan and the Butler-Willow Specific Plan, to adopt the Central Southeast Specific Plan and the accompanying plan land use map. Because we adopted the land use map, we need to amend the general plan to incorporate the land use changes proposed in the Central Southeast Area Specific Plan. And lastly, to ensure consistency, we want to rezone the approximately 136 acres of property within the planned area boundaries to make sure it's consistent with the land use changes we are suggesting.
Thank you very
With
much.
that, end of my presentation, and staff here is to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions at all for staff? Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and open this to public comments. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment in favor? If so, please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is John Kinsey. I'm here on behalf of Donna G. Sales. Thank you, obviously, for allowing me to speak this evening. Donna G. Sales is a longtime Fresno business on Cedar between Florence and Church. They're a local business with roots going back to the 60s, and they've been at this location since the 80s. Statewide, they employ nearly 1,000 people, and then here at this location, several hundreds. We got involved in this process several years ago due to some concerns that these properties were going to be downzoned and that the use was going to be inconsistent with the zoning. We understand that our properties have been taken out of this particular plan area and put into the South Central Specific Plan. And also that under the current plan, the South Central Specific Plan, that they're slotted to be, to remain light industrial. We do have some concerns. I think ideally we'd like to continue to be in this plan. We really don't want the can to be kicked down the road. We're very concerned about the uncertainty associated with us being put into the South Central Specific Plan process and that not being decided by the city for several years. We understand that process is going to be relatively controversial, and geographically, our property is much more similar, much closer to the area that we're talking about tonight than South Central Specific Plan. In fact, there's a great connection between our property and Calwa Park, which is adjacent to Donna G. Sales. And over the years, Donna G. Sales has funded numerous improvements and programs at that park. So it really views itself as part of the Central Southeast community. So we would suggest, we have a couple solutions. One would be to put the Donna G. properties back into the Central Southeast Area Specific Plan and as light industrial, or alternatively recommend that these properties be taken out of both this plan area and the South Central Specific Plan. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Dirk Puschel, and my business address is 923 Van Ness here in Fresno. I'm here this evening on behalf of the families of James Gandulia and Vera Naden, who both families have approximately 70 years in this plan area, owning property that we're going to talk about in a moment. Specifically, the property is on the north side of Florence, west of Chestnut, so the Naden property is immediately at that intersection, and the Gandulia property just west. We've been working with staff since the inception of the plan to modify the land use designation from medium-high to residential urban neighborhood. We're very supportive of that proposal that's in the plan. We ask that you support that this evening. The corollary benefit to this is that another client, Valley Health Team, who is building or is proposing to build a healthcare center in Pinedale, needs to make up 11 units based on the law where there's no net loss. They own the 1.23 acres on the southwest corner of Fir and Beechwood. They've also asked me to speak in favor of the modification to the plan, increasing densities as staff has identified. So we support the plan, and we ask that you do so as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them of me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in support of the project? Janice, do we have any individuals on Zoom with their hand raised?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and go to the public. Any individuals who would like to speak in opposition? If so, please approach the podium, state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Anna De Leon, and it's 1605 South Orange, and that would be between, I believe, Butler
Are you able
and
to?
California.
My apologies, ma'am. Can you go
Butler
ahead
in
with-
California.
Okay. May you please state your name
on
again?
Orange, Anna De Leon, 1605 South Orange.
Thank you.
I'm not too well prepared for the meeting. The first notification that we received was dated May 19th. I know he spoke about some other mailings out. I've been talking to the neighbors, and they were also not aware until this letter came out. So I'm not sure if our area was included in that mass mailing that the gentleman spoke about. We, again, are from California. I'm speaking from California to Butler on Orange. It's a very busy street. We have stores, PG&E on the other side of, on the opposite side of California, and that's where it stops. So it just feels like you're targeting the smaller businesses. Why are we not going all the way down to where PG&E is and some of the larger factories? But from Butler, from California to Butler, you have auto repairs, you have stores, several auto repairs, tire shops, and other businesses with retail. It's just, if I understand correctly, difficult to understand why a zone that busy would we want, we would want to rezone as it not to be commercial, if I understand correctly. So yeah, the concern is here. Nobody's really sure what's going on or what they want to build or what would be the purpose of this area or this particular small, 4 blocks, how it would benefit the whole plan. But I'm here to speak on behalf of the concerned neighbors and to take back some information. I haven't been able to speak to anyone at the city council.
Okay, we'll make sure that we have staff address your questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, miss. Do we have any other individuals who would like to speak in opposition? I see none. Janice, do we have any individuals on Zoom with their hand raised?
We do.
Please state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Carla Martinez. I'm a policy advocate with Leadership Council. I actually meant to speak in support for this item. I'm not in opposition. So sorry that I missed, raising my hand. But I did want to say that this draft specific plan reflects many priorities and concerns that resident leaders have voiced throughout the years. The objectives, goals, and strategies outlined throughout the plan will help create the change and desire that families in Central Southeast Fresno want for their families. We do want to appreciate staff's responsiveness and engagement with the community throughout the process and the many hours spent on this plan. We personally did also spend a lot of time on this plan, and it's great to finally see it come forward to the Planning Commission, and we hope that residents will continue to be engaged in the implementation phase as the growth of Southeast Fresno continues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other individuals with their hand raised on Zoom?
None at this time.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comments. Drew, can we have you go ahead and address some of these questions?
Is there a specific question you'd like me to address?
Yeah, we
Yes,
have,
I think it would be really helpful to bring up the map.
Okay.
Show 1605 South Orange,
Andrew, we're
which
gonna have
looks
it
to
go-
be at the intersection of Heaton and Orange. Is that correct? Okay. And then explain what the zoning is today and what it is proposed to be, what uses are allowed now, and what uses will be allowed in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely. So at the moment, the zoning there is community commercial. It's being proposed change to corridor center mixed use. I want to talk about the vision of that corridor. So we heard from the lady here tonight, similar to what we heard from the community. It's a busy corridor. There's a lot of activity there. There's a lot of fundamental businesses for the surrounding residents. Their desire was to see a beautification of that corridor, to potentially put in some design components, which is in there, that would maybe allow for a more comfortable walking environment and reduce some of the traffic. So that's in there, but also to provide a couple more additional localized services there. So with the changes in the land use and zoning that we have suggested, we have kind of a neighborhood center mixed use, so it really opens up the opportunities for a variety of different types of businesses that can go there. The long-term objectives would be for some of the vacant buildings that do exist, for those to stay in place and to be utilized as maybe a rehab of some sort and provide services. In the plan, it suggests maybe job training centers, a facility that could have a variety of small businesses. The existing fabric along that street, a majority of those buildings are in line with the development code now. There is a couple that maybe aren't, but if the businesses were legally established prior to the potential land use change, right, we have legal nonconforming, which allows them to operate in perpetuity if those businesses stay there. So the goal was to create a lively kind of neighborhood center. The concept here, which is also within our general plan, was to have complete neighborhoods. So we heard from several residents that there was a lack of access to maybe some healthy food grocers or other day-to-day amenities, and so we added in the mixed use to provide the opportunity for some of those uses to come along that street.
All right, thank you, Drew. And then also, can you go ahead and, Mr. Kinsey brought up the question in regards to that property that Donahue Sales currently holds?
And the request to bring it into the plan area,
Yeah, the request to, are we able to address that?
I'm gonna defer.
So the city council actually carved out those properties when it initiated this, this land use map that you were evaluating tonight. They carved it out and they moved it and put it into a different specific plan area. It could be theoretically in the future carved out of the other specific plan area, but it could not be added back into this for consideration.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Any questions at all for Drew? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close all public comments and the other questions. We'll bring it back to the commission. Do we have any motion or comments?
I just appreciated both Mr. Kinsey and Mr. Pichelle coming to us when something was being initiated, and we're not hearing from property owners after the whole thing's done that they didn't know what was happening. So I think I really appreciate that you're on top of it and here at the right time.
Do you want to make a comment for Miss, if it's possible, after the meeting, please have a conversation with the staff to exchange information so they can help answer any questions that you may have. Okay. Do we have any motion from the commission?
I'll move to accept the staff's recommendations.
And I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Bray, a second by Commissioner Kreiner. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. None. Motion passes. Thank you.
Chair, before we move on to the next item, I just wanted to let everyone know that this will be heard, this recommendation by the Planning Commission, this is not a final decision. The recommendation will be heard by the City Council on June 15th at or after 10 a.m.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any reports by the secretary?
I just wanted to thank all of you and our Historic Preservation Commission for a very successful Preservation Month. A lot of great activities occurred. I attended at least one. I know Commissioner Wagner attended at least one. I'm not sure if the rest of you were able to attend any, but it was really successful. We had a lot of really great events. And so we're looking forward to being able to do more Preservation Month events next May. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any unscheduled communications? Any on Zoom with their hand raised?
No, sir.
All right. It's currently 6:35. We'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Everyone have a good evening.